Everyone, I just want to say a warm and hearty good afternoon to all of you, and thank you so much for attending our virtual LeadHERS series. This series has been a great series. My name is Erica Dean, for those of you who may not know me, and I'm currently the chair of Women United. And with this series, I recall it starting actually at the height of COVID. We started this series about 2020. And it's just been so great and warm to see where it has gone and what we've all gained from this series. So, it's an honor to kind of kick off, and I'll turn it over soon and you'll hear a little bit more about it. But just really a pleasure to see it grow, and a lot of fun that we have with the guests that we've had on for this series. So I appreciate you all choosing to spend your lunch hour with us, whether you are grabbing a bite to eat while you sit back and partake, or if not, it's just great to have you with us because time is precious and time is valuable. So taking an hour out of your day to join us is very important for us. We're excited to have Dr. Bridget Cooper with us, and I'm just getting to know Bridget Cooper. So thank you again for joining us. And you'll hear more about her work in just a little bit. So for our program today, I'm going to be passing it over to Marianne Cruz in just a moment, who'll take a bit of time to tell us about the LeadHERS virtual series, as well as Women United and the overview. Then we'll hear from our keynote speaker herself. And then we'll also end with any upcoming events that Sammy Pearl Simmons will bring to us. So just want to turn it over. And, the topic is unflappable. I don't want to forget to make sure I don't mess up that. So what we're going to hear about today is unflappable. How do we become unflappable in a world that is constantly trying to compete for energy and our attention, just like right now? So you could be getting a ping somewhere else. There could be an email that you need to answer. We're asked to be in different places all the time. So looking forward to hear how do we become unflappable in the environment. So thank you again for everyone who joined us. And Marianne, if I could invite you to come on with us, I'll turn it right over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erica. And good afternoon, everyone. I am Marianne Cruz, founder of Masterful CEO and proud member of Women United LeadHERS Committee. So before we get started, I'd like to share some information regarding LeadHERS Committee and Women United. As Erica had mentioned, the LeadHERS Committee was organically organized in 2020 in an effort to connect with members during the pandemic. And through this effort, we found that members enjoyed connecting virtually in ways that can help them improve their personal and work lives. So while other Women United events have returned to in-person gathering, we have maintained the LeadHERS virtual series as a way for members to have access to learn from powerful and insightful women leaders in this region and beyond. So as many of you know, Women United is a global effort of over 70,000 women dedicated to creating a world of opportunity. Women United is engaged in over 165 communities across 6 countries. Globally, it has raised over $2 billion since 2002, supporting focus areas such as education, financial stability, and women's health. And our local Women United serves the Greater Hartford region, which covers 52 communities with a focus on raising funds for United Women supporting family financial stability programs. Members of our Women United focus on helping families in our region achieve financial security. So despite working hard, many households often live paycheck to paycheck, unable to afford the basics, or to save for future goals. So Women United invests in programs, initiatives, and services that provide financial education, job training, asset building, and other critical resources such as free tax assistance. Our fundraising efforts help ensure that participants in United Way supported programs work to identify financial goals, develop realistic budgets, reduce debt, build savings, increase income, and receive career coaching. To date, more than 12,000 individuals have participated in the financial stability programming, which includes employment and job training opportunities, access to benefits, financial coaching, and education, as well as tax preparation services. Of those, nearly 1,000 individuals who have enrolled in the job training program have improved their education and employment potential, and nearly 1,000 others have participated in financial management programs to create and maintain budgets, increase savings, and reduce debt. So as you can see, Women United is on a mission. So thank you to Women United for making this event possible. And without further ado, let's get started. So it's my privilege to introduce you to Dr. Bridget Cooper, also known as Dr. B. Dr. B is a cage rattler who helps teams and leaders think and communicate more clearly and strategically so that they can work and navigate problems proactively and effectively. So she has worked with clients to overcome the attitudes, tactics, and patterns that derail their success through coaching, corporate consulting, and leading workshops that guide and inspire people to lead more authentic, peaceful, and powerful lives. Welcome, Dr. B.
Thank you, Marianne. It's always a pleasure. Marianne and I go way back. I won't say how far back because that would age us, but many years we've done many programs together, and I was just so honored to be asked to speak to United Women and LeadHERS this morning. This midday. So unflappable. So what does that mean? Where do we come from on that? And what are we going to do today? So I'm going to share my screen in just a moment, but I wanted to take just a moment to talk about what unflappable is. So I have been doing this work with individuals and companies for over 20 years. And I came to have a very large toolkit that I use with clients. And that toolkit is how to be unflappable. So hence unflappable. So my shameless plug for the book, Amazon, but it's a collection of 70 tools that I've pulled together over the last 20 years that help people not only in their professional lives, but also in their personal lives, navigate what their part of any conflict or stressful moment is, and be able to root out what those things are, modify them, and be able to have more successful conversations, projects, programs, and teams. So with no further ado, I'm going to jump into this tech thing that I am just so good at, and that's sarcasm, everyone. So I'm going to share my screen. Hang on. There we go, share. Okay, hang on one sec. And now we're going to get to my PowerPoint. Here we go. And we're going to start from the beginning. All right. So talked a little bit about unflappable. So what we're going to talk about today are the 3 keys, and there are so many keys to being unflappable. As I said, I have 70 tools in the book, but I'm going to talk about 3 of my favorites, and I think the core underpinnings of what it takes to be unflappable, which is really, what is that? Unflappable is being able to give the appearance of or to be calm in any situation. And wouldn't we love to do that these days? So what I want to start off with is you have to understand my premise before you can buy into what it is that I'm telling you. So my premise in all of the work that I do is that awareness equals choice and choice equals power. So let me break that down one word at a time so we're really clear about what I mean by each term. So awareness is really, what do we know about ourselves and other people that allows us to be more intentional and more present in every moment that we're in, to be able to look both within and outside of ourselves to see what may be happening. And a lot of that comes into play in the tools that I'm going to be talking about today to build your awareness toolkit. And what more awareness does is it offers us more choice. So if we are more aware of what might be happening, if we are more aware of our own tendencies and troubles, we can then open up to have more choices. If we aren't aware, then we're just going off of habitual process, and we're not able to see how many choices we have in any given situation to address things differently. So if we have more awareness, we have more choice. And what that leads to is having more power. And let me be clear, whenever I speak about power, I am never speaking about power over other people. I'm always speaking about the power that we hold from within to be the best possible versions of ourselves. So awareness equals choice and choice equals power. So our job here today, the time we're going to spend today, is going to be talking about how do we increase our awareness about certain things that we have going on in our heads and the heads of others to increase that choice, to increase that power. And by the way, just as a kind of a housekeeping thing, you can interrupt me at any point. I want this to be conversational. If there are questions or curiosities or struggles that you're having with anything that I'm talking about, you can pop it in the chat, and then I'll get interrupted, and then we'll get back into it. So please feel free to do that. So does this look like anyone? Do you feel that sometimes on a daily basis? So I love what the internet offers us in terms of photos, but this one is one of my favorites because it's like not just one hand, right? It's both, you know, just trying to get back to some semblance of peace and calm. So to me, this picture denotes stress. So what is stress? Well, I like to think of stress as a really simple mathematical equation. And stress is simply the difference between what we seek to control and what we can actually control. Let me say it again. Stress is simply the difference between what we seek to control and what we can actually control. So what does that look like? So I'd like to think about it. Maybe you commuted to work today, or maybe you commuted to work yesterday or someday this week, or had to go on an errand somewhere, and you got behind someone who would just not step on it. So this morning for me, it was that person who had to jump out in front of me on my way to a meeting, right? And then was really, really slow. And you're like, oh, right, both hands over the eyes. And all I wanted to do was to jump into their car, lay on the gas, or maybe put on the right blinker and pull over and kind of let me go. Instead, that's not what was happening. So I wanted to be able to control something that I couldn't control, which meant that my stress was higher. So what do we do about that? How do we become unflappable, knowing that that's how we work? Well, recognizing that our brains work in certain ways. So when we feel that stress, our brains don't know the difference between that and something that is really threatening us. So our amygdala starts, pumping out all sorts of cortisol, and we get adrenaline pumping, and we get upset, and then we start working from there. So to recognize as soon as that process begins, right? So as soon as that person pulled out in front of me, what did I do? I took a deep breath. I dropped my shoulders, right? Not hands off the wheel, but relaxed my hands to a certain extent because I tend to fist up when I get stressed, and let my body know through slower, intentional breathing, through the dropping of my shoulders, through the relaxing of my hands, whatever other muscles might be tensing at that moment, that I was safe and okay. And what that did was right away, using brain science, it dialed down my stress level. And then I went to my brain and I thought, what am I in control of right now? Well, I'm in control of leaving a safe distance between myself and the person in front of me. I'm in control of seeing something that's going on in my environment that might be happier. So I started to, roll down my window. I started to listen to beautiful birds chirping this time of year. I started to smell the lilac scent that was coming in through the window. I got really present in that moment and knew that that wasn't something that I was in control of. So when you look at the stress that's in your life, what you notice is that so many times we're focused on whatever it is that we can't control instead of focusing on what it is that we can. So my counsel to you in wanting to be unflappable is to focus in any given situation on what those things are that you can exercise control over, which is what you think, how you then feel based on what you're thinking, how you're perceiving the moment that you're in, and then what actions you're taking at following those thoughts and feelings. So if you look more at what you can actually control than focusing your attention on what you can't, whether it's a looming deadline or a person who isn't getting back to you or another stressful encounter that is upcoming, all of those things tend to set off that adrenaline cortisol response in you and get you really tight and far less capable of being able to see all of the choices you have around what you're thinking, how to address those problems, etc. So that's how we address stress. So that's our first key out of our 3 to becoming unflappable. Any questions or particular things you want to talk about stress before I move on to key number 2? And we can always double back. You can always ask me questions later. Okay. All right, I'm going to move on. So the second key is curiosity. So I love this image because it's focusing in and looking out to be able to be really curious about what might be going on. So one of the things about stress is that because it's based in control wants certainty. Control wants knowledge. Control wants to be clear and firm on exactly what's going to happen. So for me this morning, when I was on my way to that meeting, I wanted to know how long it was going to take me now to get to my appointment to make sure that I wasn't going to be late. So I wanted information. I wanted certainty. The problem is that often isn't available to us because I didn't know, right? I didn't know how long that was going to take. I didn't know how many turns I was going to be following the slow driver. I didn't know how many lights I was then going to make or miss. So I didn't have that certainty to be able to capture. So in knowing that we're looking in that stress circumstance to have control and that our minds want to get to certainty regardless of the cost, because so many times we jump to conclusions and to certainty over thinking that we know something that we don't know just to feel more in control. But so often what that does is it limits our ability to see all of the choices available to us. So curiosity is the antidote. So if we want to be unflappable, one of the things that we have to get really comfortable in is not knowing, is not being sure, is being curious about what else could be happening. So often we're telling stories, we're narrating our lives as we go through them, telling stories about ourselves and other people, about conflicts that we're in, about motivations behind behaviors, about, future fortune telling of what's going to happen in the future. We're doing this all the time. We're creating these stories in our heads. And the problem is that unchallenged, those stories reduce the number of options that we have available to us. Because if we're certain about why something is happening, then we can only see the choices available to us to address those problems and those people and issues in our lives in lockstep, because this equals this. Instead, what curiosity does is it allows us to open up that viewfinder, to be able to expand our ability to see more what might be happening. So all that curiosity takes is a really simple tool. And again, this is one of the tools in Unflappable. How we get to curiosity is simple. 2 words can lead you there every time. So whenever you make a statement about something that you're sure about, oh, I'm going to be late, end that with and or. So the 2 words are and or. So and might look like this. Oh, I'm going to be late. And I'm going to be safe. And I'm going to be really present when I get there. And I'm going to work at calming myself so that when I bust through the door of that meeting, I don't carry the stress of this moment into the next. And I'm going to be really intentional about making the most use of my time. See how that works? See how that starts to calm our central nervous system down and allow us to be the best version of ourselves, regardless of what we aren't in control of. That's how we use and. How you can use or is to say, I'm going to be late or maybe traffic will lighten up. Maybe I'll make all the lights and they'll all be green. Maybe the person on the other end of the meeting that I'm on is delayed in traffic too, because if I am, they are. Anybody who was traveling around Glastonbury last night, something happened on Route 2 in East Hartford that made it a normal visit to the grocery store for me last night that usually takes about 8 minutes, take 25. So everybody was in the same bag that I was in. So maybe that curiosity is about, well, maybe they are too. Maybe they're stressed. Everybody's been late to something before. So maybe I find out how people respond to stress in this circumstance. So just getting curious about what else might be true, what else might be happening, can really help us to be less flappable. So curiosity, the lesson in curiosity is to ask questions instead of making statements, and just ask what else might be happening, what else could be true, what story am I telling myself that's leading to this, stress response, and get really curious about the stories that we're telling. Make sense? All right. Any questions or comments or curiosities about curiosities? Yeah, I did that on curiosity. I just love curiosity. I used to run a summer camp for kids, and our tagline was "Curious Minds Rock," and our mascot was Curious George, because as much trouble as that monkey got into, he really knew how to be curious, how to go on adventures, how to see possibility where other people saw roadblocks. And so if we want to be the best leaders that we can be, the best people that we can be, the more that we lead with curiosity instead of certainty, the more that we can do that. We can be that best version of ourselves. Now here comes one of my favorite two-part tools, which is called compassion and accountability. So I first want to back up and tell you a story of how I got here, because all of the tools that I have in my toolkit came through my own personal experiences and my experience coaching other people, watching what their struggles were and helping them out of them. And they're based in brain science, they're based in psychology, they're based in a lot of experience over the years with my clients and myself on how we resolve issues, how we come to a better understanding of ourselves and other people. So the story that I have to tell goes back about 5.5 years. For those of you who don't know my story, about 5.5 years ago, I was having a great night with a friend of mine. We were talking about a trip I had just been on to Ireland. I'd just done a TED Talk. I was on top of the world. I was having all sorts of professional and personal success, and I was really happy about where my life was and where it was leading. I was on that, on that high that you get onto, right? And we were traveling home from dinner that night through an intersection. And as we went through that intersection, a car came barreling through, going the opposite direction, coming across, and T-boned us and slammed into the passenger side where I was driving, and flipped us onto our roof and sent us up the road on our roof. And in that accident, I suffered traumatic brain injury. I lost about 25 IQ points. I lost a hearing and visual disturbances and processing issues. I'm constantly nauseous when I'm not doing presentations like this. I'm chewing gum 24/7. And so you can imagine that at that moment, and all the moments that have followed it, it changed my life. It changed the way that I saw myself. It changed the way that I saw the possibilities for my future. All sorts of things happened. And in that initial process, what hit me was that I had to find new tools to be able to do things that I had been taking for granted before. So where there used to be ease, there was difficulty. And compassion and accountability came directly through this experience, because what I noticed about myself as I was in this recovery, where I thought this was going to be a temporary issue, that I was just temporarily feeling sick, that I was diving so hard into compassion. I was doing the equivalent of laying on my couch eating bonbons and, watching copious amounts of Netflix, got real cozy with that. But in doing so, when I was in that heavy, heavy compassion place of really sad and really upset about where my life had now become, I then felt terribly about myself because I wasn't doing the things that I wanted to be doing. And then I would vacillate and overcorrect into accountability, where I was like, let's do this, on and on and on, right? Trying to drive results and get work done and read even though it was painful and all of that. And so what I started to notice about those two extremes was that it was only when I was in balance between the two that I was finding any relief and satisfaction. So let's break it down and talk about what compassion looks like and what accountability looks like and how they can be balanced and equal and how that leads us to be unflappable. So what compassion says is, of course what? Of course we are exactly where we are as a predictable and expected result of every experience we've had and decision we've made. Compassion says, of course. It says, of course I was feeling frustrated. Of course I was sad. Of course I was mad. Of course I was feeling hopeless. Of course I was feeling, quieted and insulating myself against the world because of how I was feeling. Of course. And we can all say that with every person we meet, that of course they are behaving and feeling exactly as they are thinking, feeling, and behaving as a direct and predictable result of every experience they've had and decision they've made. Of course. And when we start to face the world with of course, we start getting a lot less agitated with other people, not because we're happy with their behavior, but because we can understand that it is exactly where we would expect it to be. Of course. So of course we would be there. Of course they would be there. Of course they would have the responses and practices and habits and interpretations that they have. Of course. Now, if compassion says, of course, accountability says, now what? Now what? All right, so we are exactly where we are as that direct and predictable result of all of our experiences and decisions. Now, what are we going to do about it? Because accountability says if we're going to be any different in a future moment than we are right now, we have to do something different to get us there. Because what got us here, Einstein says, the thinking that got us here is not the thinking that's going to get us out. He said it much better than that, but you know what I mean. So if we are going to be any other place than where we are now, that of course moment, then we have to do something different, more, less, different, better than we have done to this point. And that's where the accountability goes. So we can say, of course, but we have to follow it with accountability in equal measure. If we're leaning one way or the other, and I'll talk about that on the next slide, it looks pretty ugly. So again, compassion says, of course, followed by now what? Now, what does this look like in real life? Well, I'll tell you the horror stories that my clients would tell about me, kind of kidding. But when my clients come to me and say to me, you are not going to believe what so-and-so did, said, experienced. And they come to me and they say that, and you know what I say back to them? Yeah, I do believe it. I saw it coming. Why didn't you? Right? Because people are more predictable than we often give them credit for. And when we come at a moment saying, I can't believe they did such and such, when you absolutely can, because coming from compassion, that they are exactly where they are doing exactly what they're doing, they're thinking exactly what they're thinking and feeling exactly what they're feeling as a direct and predictable result of all those experiences and decisions. You can see that happening. And when you do that, I can't believe this is happening, I can't believe they did this, you are dialing up the drama dial all on your own. You are saying, I can't believe, when you absolutely can. If you absolutely could have seen that coming. So one of the self-accountability pieces is to be able to recognize that other people and ourselves are quite predictable. Most people don't act out of character very often unless they're under extreme stress. And then that's pretty much in character because they're under extreme stress, right? So don't be asking me questions late at night after I've exhausted myself all day and expect a reliable answer. You're not going to get it. That would be an expectation that would be outside the realm of reasonableness. So one of the ways that we use this tool is to dial down that drama, dial down that reactivity, dial down that stress and affront that we feel when other people and even ourselves are behaving exactly as we could expect them to. And then accountability is about holding ourselves and other people accountable for maybe moving away from that, maybe shifting that if they want to be different in the future, if you want to be different in the future. Make sense? Any questions? I'm going to talk about what the balance looks like and what this might play out. Do you want me to move on to that, or if there are any questions I can?
Bridget, if you could just maybe comment a little bit about when people have bad behavior towards you. Like, of course, the now what and how do you navigate that? You know, we talk a lot of times, whether they're loved ones or colleagues, where, you know, you have these, you must be in. So the now what would be, I don't want to deal with them, but that's not a choice that we can make. It's real. So can you talk a little bit around how those boundaries, when that behavior really is outside of what's acceptable, like you've had that realization, what's the now what, or how do you get to that?
So you said a few things and my brain starts like hitting and wanting to address each one of them individually. So I'm going to do my best here. So one of the things is you said the word boundary and you said, how do I address the behavior? I want to point out one issue that I see come up all the time is that we have this misunderstanding about what a boundary is. A boundary is not about being able to change any other person's behavior, because we can't. The only person that can change their behavior is that person. So sometimes we think, I have this boundary that means that you can't do that. Nope. All a boundary says is that if you do that, when you do that, this is what I'm going to do. This is my response to your behavior. So the accountability is with ourselves of how we're going to respond and hold a boundary and communicate a boundary to say, because you have done this, this is how I'm going to need to respond. I would rather not have to respond this way, but this is my boundary. So again, in your head, you can behave however you're going to behave, but this is going to be my response. Oftentimes where our stress comes from is that we start to put ourselves in the position of trying to orchestrate and change other people's behavior, and we cannot do that. All we can do is communicate our satisfaction or dissatisfaction with their behavior and alert them to what our response is and is going to be in the future. We can ask them questions. We can try to motivate a different response. And I have a tool in there called motivational interviewing that can be very helpful in that. There are things that we can do to guide and to motivate and inspire other people to behave differently. But at the end of the day, the only persons whose behavior we have any control over is our own. So that's kind of the mindset shift somewhat in Unflappable, is that so often we spend so much of our emotional and mental energy, especially as women, because we've been raised to do so, is to see our success as a direct product of what other people do and how we've saved or helped or guided or changed them, right? And that cannot be our currency going forward, because it doesn't work for us. It exhausts us and removes our ability to be clear and strong in those conversations. Does that help?
Very incredibly helpful, especially when dealing with adult children, and you know, the behavior that I'm seeing from them might not be what I'd want, but I think that real point about the stress is coming from me wanting to control that when I can't. Like, this is their choices. So
right.
Really, really illuminating, Dr. B. Thanks.
And what that does is, and you know, I could go on for hours and hours. And I know we don't have it, but because Unflappable, the whole premise of it is that one tool leads into another. There are so many tools that branch off from all of these tools, right? So the answer isn't all in one tool, it's in all of the tools and how they come together. But one of the things that we got really mixed up about, and I talk about it in Unflappable, is about being nice versus being kind. And what happens is that when we are trying to control the behavior of other people, when we are trying to affect a result through someone else that we don't have any control over, and then we end up resenting them because we do, when they don't do our bidding, right? When they don't do it the way that we would have done it, when they don't do it the way that we tried to demand or cajole or convince them to do, then we end up putting a resentment on them that they didn't earn, because they never said they were going to do it that way, right? They never, maybe they did, they broke an agreement, then you can hold them accountable to it. But when we try to make other people do things the way that we want them to do them, we end up holding the bag of resentment, and so do they. So if we want to clean up our relationships, if we want to clear some of those paths, if we want to be in more integrity in our own selves, we have to know where we begin and end, which is right here in us. And if we spent more time, honestly, if we all spent more time looking inward than trying to control outward, things would actually go so much more smoothly. Because there's such a price we pay for trying to do it that way. You know, we've been raised, especially women of a certain age, we've been raised to that's what our value is how other people, how our kids turn out, how our, spouses are successful, how, all of these external things that aren't where our value actually rests. It rests within us and our ability to contribute clearly, authentically, and powerfully in our own lives. That's my little pulpit moment. Apologize. So the balance here then about compassion and accountability is the compassion looks like, what does compassion look like? How does it kind of like express itself, and how can we build it? Part of it is self-care. And by self-care, I don't mean self-indulgence. And by self-care, I don't necessarily mean mani-pedis and back massages, although those are wonderful things to have. Self-care can simply look like holding a boundary and being clear about it. It can look like taking a moment in the driveway before you walk in and take all the garbage that you just experienced in some prior moment and not bring it into the next. Self-care can look like a lot of things that don't necessarily mean, long, pretty nails and, the best haircut, right? It can look like simple, very small things about maybe getting in a little bit more rest instead of exhausting ourselves trying to do those controlling other people things. It also looks like embracing imperfection, because none of us are or will ever be perfect. And by seeing and recognizing and accepting and really embracing those parts of ourselves that are imperfect, we allow other people in our midst to do the same. And wouldn't that be amazing to have conversations where everyone was embracing their own imperfections and trying to front and be, like, as I call it, fake book, and being something that we aren't in order to try to impress people who are also struggling with some of those same struggles, right? So embracing imperfection. And the last one was that, yeah, question.
I just wanted to name what's in the chat. So Pam was just sharing in the chat that it's like being told by her dad that she's an anchor, which is kind, but doesn't mean that everything he needs Pam has to do by herself, and be available all the time. So just wanted to share that example from the chat.
And so I think so many times that certainty, right? So what your dad is expressing, which is beautiful, is his desire to have certainty around what your role is in his life, which is anchor, because that allows him to feel safer because you're fulfilling this role. Whether or not you decide that that's how you always want to behave and how you always want to show up with him is your choice. But him expressing that, he gets to do that, right? He gets to do that, and you get to feel good that he feels so safe and comfortable with you. And you also get to call a boundary and say, not always am I going to show up for you in that way, because I also have to show up for myself. I also have to show up for other things in my life in a way that might not always afford me the privilege of being able to do that. So that's really, I think that's about being kind versus nice, because I get into it far more in Unflappable and in some videos I've done on it. But that nice is this currency that we sometimes do of meeting the expectations of others and then holding resentments because we didn't do the thing that was actually true to our own truth. And that isn't kind. So looking at that. So the risk when we get over compassionate, we get over that on that side of compassion, is that we get inactive, we overindulge ourselves, like me, where I was just laying around not doing anything because I just felt so badly about what was happening in my life. I wasn't holding myself accountable to try to take that next step forward to be different. Accountability looks like tracking progress, even if it's just a little, even if it's just a tiny little thing that you did differently. If you're trying to, I don't know, be more limber so that you can be more healthy in your life, tracking progress doesn't mean saying, if I don't do it 5 days this week, then I'm not doing anything better. No, one time, that's progress. That's a change. The second one is asking for help. And I can say with some certainty, not, it's also some curiosity balancing that most of us have struggles asking for help. We love being asked for help. We love being the person who swoops in with the cape on, but asking for help we find struggle with. And so I want to push you on that if that rings true for you. That when we aren't asking for help when we need it, but we are offering help when it is asked, we're actually being selfish because we are removing the ability for other people to find the joy we find in being helpful to us. So when we don't ask for help, we don't allow those people who care about us in our lives, who want to be the hero, who want to be that person who saves the day and helps us out, of being that person, because we won't let them help. So if you want to be more selfless, you actually ask for help. Doesn't mean asking for help, willy-nilly, but asking people to do what it is that they are good at doing and they need to feel important and valued, and allowing them to extend that assistance to you. That is how we do better. When we're overcompensating in accountability, it can look like perfectionism and overwork and all of those things that take us out of balance, of driving across, the finish line, regardless of what, the cost to ourselves is. That makes sense. So having that balance of compassion and accountability is really important, and modeling that. And for that, going back to Melissa, to that idea about, adult children and parenting adult children. So much of what we do as leaders within organizations and also within our families and our communities is that we model what we see. So if we are asking for other people to do something with and for us that we aren't doing with for ourselves, that is much harder to do. That's a much heavier lift. So it always comes back to us, and not about everything hanging on us that we are responsible for making other people do a thing or follow our lead. But it is so much easier to have people follow a model than to follow a direction, right? So when you are doing the thing and people are like, whoa, what? They've got that, they seem happier, they seem calmer. I want a little of what they have. I'm dating myself, but when Harry met Sally, right? I'll have what she's having. If we have that same sense of we're modeling that and people want to have what it is that we are showing, then we want to do that. Make sense? All right. So with that, I would love to open it up to questions and examples, and I'm happy to, give specific, offers to what you have going on. I'm also happy to take it offline if you want to reach out to me at bridget@drbridgetcooper.com, where you can get my contact information through LeadHERS. I would, love to answer any specific things that you might not share here on the chat. But what other chat kind of questions or comments can I answer? This is for you guys, just saying.
I was gonna say, I don't have a question, but apparently you've done such a great job that you have everyone thinking as to, okay, how do we find that balance, but also it's so easy, as you mentioned, to always look outward, to
Right.
take the time, press pause, and look inward before reacting,
Yeah.
is crucial. So thank you for that.
I think one of the things is that if we, and we're cultured to do this oftentimes, is to find the villain, right? To identify the problem and to put ourselves, unfortunately, in the place of victim without meaning to do that. Because as soon as when we name a villain, when we name the person or the thing that is causing us the discomfort, and not to say that they aren't there, and not to say that that isn't real, but once we name them, we then have a choice in a storyline, is are we going to then hold a victim orientation, or are we going to hold a hero orientation? And we get to choose those two things. And I would argue that the victim place is the way we often show up, and not because we mean to, but because we don't see where our power is. We don't see where our agency is. And so much of it is going back to that, in expanding our awareness and understanding of how we and other people tick, so that we can see all of the choices that are available to us. We can see all of the options that are in front of us, so that we can then address whatever villain it is that is in our storyline. What I would suggest is honestly not seeing any villains as they were, but instead actors, as instead people who are simply in our lives, or things that are simply showing up in our lives, and seek to figure out how it is that we get through, around, over, under, collaborate with them, so that they can actually be stepping stones to something greater. If not, what we do is we give them our power, and we increase that drama, and we increase that stress, and we get locked in overthinking and analyzing things, to death, instead of taking action that really gives us positive results.
This is Pam. This has been amazing. So thank you. Thank you for this. Absolutely amazing. And the hero victim, I think, and speaking for myself, or maybe Gen X type of being a hero was a little ego driven. So and it was so much easier to sit back and just take, at least it was in my life and through my chapters, take what was coming at me.
Right.
And
Overfunctioning, right? That
Yes.
overfunctioning, right? Which is having, and that's where we get into looking at compassion and accountability as not only what we do with ourselves, but what we do with others. So the more that we rescue other people from their own experiences, the consequences of their own actions, etc., the more we build resentments toward them in ourselves, and the more we disempower them. We tell them that through our actions that they aren't capable of doing this thing that we can do for them. So if we could start as humans, but again, as women, we could resist that temptation and that invitation to overfunction with the people in our lives. It's actually such a respectful move. It says that we believe that they are capable of doing that thing all on their own, and we're here to help them when they need us, but we can step back and let them do that. The more we see ourselves as hero, which again goes off in this kind of, villain and, overfunctioning piece, is the more we do that, the more that we actually harm the very people and situations that we're trying to improve.
Oh, that's so insightful. I love that respect. It's like a respectful move.
It's so respectful. It's so honoring. We sometimes, again, I go back to this nice versus kind idea of, we are so often nice of doing these nice things that aren't kind. And kind comes from recognizing what really is in service of ourselves and others, what is really going to create an environment that allows people to be that best version of themselves. And nice things are usually very in the opposite direction of that. And kindness isn't. And so we really have to see where we've been doing things that are being very self-serving and being nice, and instead be kind.
Bridget, this is Melissa. Just one last question, and I know we're just about at time to,
Yep.
to wrap up our final items. How do we best support you in your book? Is it buy it on Amazon, go directly to you?
So you can do, yeah, thank you for that. So if you go to my website at drbridgetcooper.com, I have a community. I promise you, I am not great at sending out a whole bunch of stuff. So you're not going to get deluged in your email with things, but you can join my mailing list for when I do send out things. If not, you can go directly to Amazon and pick up a copy of Unflappable. What I do ask for anyone who has read it or shared it or sent it to friends, if you please review it on Amazon. They have this little algorithm that once you get over a certain number of reviews, they start promoting your book. And it's less about the money that I get from selling the book. It's really about getting these tools in the hands of more people, because more hands make lighter work. And we could all benefit from being more unflappable and using these tools to be able to navigate our personal and professional lives better. So I thank you for that. Thank you for asking, Melissa.
Thank you. I was going to say, now we'll turn it over to Sandy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Dr. B, thank you so much. This was
Thank
so
you.
insightful, as you've heard from our members and others. You've provided us with such, terrific tools, just 3 out of many that you offer in your book. So I really do hope our members do go and read your book and review for your benefit and theirs. But before we close, I would like to share some exciting events that we have coming up for our Women United. So Shop for Pop will be held on May 15th, starting at 4 o'clock at, I think it's called Biberon in the West Farms Mall. Shop for Pop's an opportunity to support the silent auction for Power to the Purse. This is an event to mobilize and energize our table leaders and our guests. Table leaders are Women United members who are working to support Power to the Purse by buying tables and selling tickets to the event. So if you're interested in becoming a table leader, please plan to attend this event or reach out to Lauren Pereira to indicate your interest. We do ask members to register for this event, and the link is in the chat. During the event, we aim to secure a goal of 10 sets of purses and wallets. The price points are $55 to $145, and we encourage members to pair up to make their contributions or donate toward an item if you can't commit to the full price. The store, which is a local women-owned boutique, is graciously offering 10% off for attendees to shop for the auction and perhaps something to take home. The items donated to Power the Purse will help fill the silent auction with fun local purses to help get us to our auction goal of raising $65,000. And after we shop, we'll all convene for dinner and drinks following the event. So that's one coming up. We also have, this year is a challenge for table leaders who sell or fill 4 tables will be entered into a drawing to win a trip to Antigua. Again, if you're not yet a table leader and would like to support our mission of helping families achieve financial stability, please reach out to Lauren today to learn more. And now to share more about our main event, the Power of the Purse Luncheon is our signature fundraiser with a sought-after silent auction. This year, we are so excited to hear from our keynote speaker, Rita Moreno, best known as Anita from the West Side Story. Rita was the first Latina to win all 4 of the most prestigious awards in show business, an Oscar, a Tony, 2 Emmys, and a Grammy. Her countless credits span more than 7 decades, beginning with her Broadway debut at age 13, appearing in 40-plus feature films and countless television shows. If you cannot support as a table leader, please support our efforts to sell out the Connecticut Convention Center by purchasing a ticket to attend. Please scan the QR code or click the link in the chat to get your ticket today. Those on the call can have an exclusive extended early bird pricing on regularly priced tickets. All you need to do is use the promo code EBTICKET at checkout to secure tickets at the early bird price of $150. And we certainly hope to see you all there. So thank you so much all for attending this afternoon, and we hope to see you soon. And Dr. Bridget, Dr. B, thank you again so much
Thank
for sharing your insights and being part of this special event with us. Thank you.
you.